is team. Who is your team? A little background about this. I have a team of 21 right now for Validate. It's a pretty big team. It's a crazy big team for indie games. But who is your team? Validate has a team of mostly all people of color. We have no white people on our team. I did that because I wanted to create a safe environment. And I know the best way for an environment to be safe is to be around people who are just like me. And I'm not saying that white people in the industry are creating unsafe environments. I'm not saying that. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that sometimes it is hard to work with white people because they think that something may be okay, but it was really a microaggression. And no one wants to deal with that while they're trying to make a game that they love.
That galaxy brain goes by the name of Dani Landores. I think I'm saying that name properly. She's the associate narrative designer at Cliffhanger Games, and they are the people that are working on Marvel's Black Panther, which is upcoming for, I believe, the PlayStation. What matters here is what she said in there, and the fact that she is the associate narrative designer in a game that is otherwise going to be quite big. Now, whether it sells well, I'm not really sure, because Marvel games have been a bit hit or miss lately, but I really want to focus in on a couple of things she said there. Now, she said that her entire team has no white people in it. The way she said that, to me, sounded like she went out of her way to do that, which, in my opinion, would be kind of racist and unfair. If someone's good enough for the job, and they're working on a specific game, whether it's Black Panther or Thor or Spider-Man, it doesn't really matter, then they should be hired for the job. I don't think they should be excluded just because of their skin color. I also don't think they should be excluded just because it's Black Panther. For those of you that don't know, the actual creator of the Black Panther was a white man. And as most of you know, that creator's name is Stan Lee. He was also created by an individual called Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby is also a white man. The Black Panther character is created by white people, and so I don't think white people should be excluded from telling stories surrounding the Black Panther. Of course, you're going to have black people involved in that project because it's a character from Africa, but should white people be completely excluded? No. I think it would be absolutely ridiculous if you excluded all men from telling a story about Jessica Jones. I think it would be ridiculous if you excluded all women from telling a story about Luke Cage. And so this imbecile is another person that is going to be involved in a pretty big game. And the reason that I point out is because, like I always say on this channel, you have to vote with your wallets. And when people are behaving in this manner, I think it's fair to point it out. She then also said that she wanted to create a safe working environment for her colleagues, her fellow black colleagues or people that are in her team. And then went on to say that she's not saying that white people make it unsafe. So if they're not making it unsafe, why do you need to create a safe working environment? Do you not hear yourself? What you're saying makes no sense. If you need to create a safe working environment, that means they are making it unsafe. So that is exactly what you are saying. And it's people like this that really irritate me. This in particular gets under my skin because, as I've expressed to you guys before, I am half black and I don't feel like I need to be coddled away from white people. I don't feel like I need to be coddled away from anyone. I mean, first of all, majority of my interactions with people from all races are pleasant. Yes, you get races that have pockets of racism wherever you go, wherever that might be in the world. But that's usually not the overwhelming majority. The overwhelming majority of people are usually calm, cool, and collected. Now, obviously, culturally, there's going to be differences. And so culturally, we might step on each other's toes, but you can easily let someone know without being rude or calling it a microaggression. Microaggression, for those of you that don't know, is a statement, action, or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group such as a racial or ethnic minority. And the problem with the word microaggression is that it's very flippant. You can say anything is a microaggression. I'll give you guys an example. I was told that somebody asking, "Where are you from?" is a microaggression. And that's something that I've been asked all my life because I look racially ambiguous. People can't really put their finger on where I'm from. And so simply asking where I'm from is deemed as a microaggression. Now that is news to me. I've never taken it as a microaggression. I've taken it as I'm in England, I'm surrounded by white people, and even with some black people, they're like, well, you don't really look entirely black, where are you from? It's a perfectly normal thing to ask, but now these days it's seen as a microaggression. But back to my point that I was saying earlier, I really despise people like this because they feel like black people are so fragile and so damaged, that we need to be coddled, we can only work in our own groups, and we need to be made to feel safe, and so we need to all huddle together. That couldn't be further from the truth. Now, I know that people that think like this are in the minority, but the reason that we point them out is A, because they are infesting the gaming industry, and B, because if you don't point out individuals like this, you will go and buy their game, you will support their ideologies and their narratives, and their influence will only spread. This person and people like her are working on the Black Panther game. And so once again, the mission here is to alert as many people as possible that these people don't respect you. They don't even respect themselves. I feel disrespected as a black man watching that and listening to her. And I implore people to not support the game. And so even if this only reaches 1 or 2 people and they're like, yeah, I'm not down with that. I'm not down with supporting people like this. I'm not down with excluding people because of their skin color. And I'm not down with trying to coddle people or come up with some microaggression bullshit argument. I'm not going to support the game. Then I feel like my job is done. Now, I should point out to you guys that this individual, this Lalonda's character, did actually work for Sweet Baby Inc. And so I've got a couple of screenshots here of some tweets detailing some of the remarks she's made more recently. You've got one here saying, gamers have been really racist lately and I'm trying to ignore it, but it's hard not to when I see it sometimes. Just creating problems in your head. I don't understand the outrage over video games, especially games they have no interest to play. Now, this again is a deflection tactic. It's not that I don't have any interest in playing Marvel games. Actually, that's the complete opposite. Before people like you came in and started destroying Marvel both in the movies and on the games, I was very interested. I have an extensive collection of comic books that were designed or created before people like you came in. I no longer support the comic book industry because I don't like where it's gone. And as much as I might enjoy sitting down and reading a good comic, they're very hard to find these days. They're still out there. There's still good stories that are told. But largely, Marvel and DC have been hijacked by people that don't know what kind of stories I want to hear and I want to read and I want to listen to. And I think that's true for the masses. If you look at the comic book sales versus the manga sales, comic books are astronomically down and manga is all the way up. I believe it was Demon Slayer or Jujutsu Kaisen, I cannot remember which one, but one of them outsold the entire American comic book scene. That should really speak volumes about what the consumers want, but obviously they will play it off like people are being racist and that there's outrage for no reason. You've also got another tweet here from Danny that says, I just stopped taking y'all seriously when y'all start running around saying white people can experience racism because I did not suffer through 2020 for y'all to act like you weren't an ally to BLM 4 years later, posting that tired ass screenshot of the Google definition of racism. I just don't care anymore. Now, what someone like Danny believes, and this is reflected in her team, is that she doesn't believe her as a black woman can be racist to a white woman or a white man. She thinks that's not possible. She's probably under the impression you can only be racist when you act from a position of power, which would actually be pretty funny considering it's her team and so she's in a position of power and she chose to exclude people. So even if we follow her own definition of racism, she would literally be acting in racist ways. She is the head of a team and she excluded people. It makes no sense. Someone make it make sense to me. But I don't agree with that racism definition. I actually believe that I and my friends, let's say I'm with all black friends, right? Now I'm mixed race, but for argument's sake, let's say we're all black and we see a white man walking down the road and we target him specifically because he is white. That would be racist. We don't need to be from a position of power. We can look at him for the color of his skin and single him out. That would be racist. But the funny thing is that an individual called RileyMan1080 actually got her to admit that she's racist. And what he said here is that, so being appropriately called racist is tiresome. You could try not being racist. And she replies saying, yeah, I'm racist, so what now? So at least she's open about it. At least we understand that a person in a position of power working over on the Black Panther game is an open racist now, and we can see that reflected in her team. Now, Danny is somebody that thinks that if you believe, so me for example, believe that you can be racist to white people, that makes me a racist. As you can see here in her tweet, it says, if you think you can be racist to white people, you literally are. She then goes on to say, I didn't imply anything. Racism and prejudice are not the same thing. Racism is systemic. White people are not systematically affected negatively by racism. Certain groups of white people throughout history have been affected by prejudice based on where they are from. Which again is just rich considering you are a team leader. You have a team that was constructed to not have white people in there. Now let's say that you climb the ladder in cliffhanger games, or let's say you get appointed a position of power by Marvel? Will you continue to behave like this? What if you become the CEO? Will you continue to behave like that? Because you understand that when you're in a position of power and you make those decisions, that you are acting within the system that you operate in unfairly to a group of people. Now, some of you might be asking, Michael, if you're half black, why are you against this person? Why are you constantly talking about it? And the simple answer is that if you behave in this way, it will come back to bite you. Now, I literally treat people like equals as long as they are respectful to me. I don't care what gender you are and what race you are. Man or woman, it doesn't really matter. As long as you are respectful and as long as you can do the job, then you should be allowed to do the job and you should be spoken to with a level of respect. Respect is earned, obviously, but there's basic respect you offer people until they break it. I certainly don't look at somebody, being that I may have been in positions of power before in certain places, and say, I'm not going to hire you because of the color of your skin or what is hanging between your legs or lack thereof. So that's topic one. That's Dani Lalonde. She is a racist, and I encourage all of you to not support the Black Panther game. Like I said, we need to get people like this out of the gaming industry, and the only way they are going to get out of the gaming industry is if we keep on speaking with our voices and we keep on voting with our wallets. They need to understand that this sort of behavior is not okay. I have no issue with Dani being in charge of a team as long as her intentions are in the right place, and her intentions are clearly not in the right place, and it is going to be reflected in the narrative of that game. Now I would like to move on to an individual called Kim Belair. You guys probably know who Kim Belair is by now. Kim Belair is the co-founder of Sweet Baby Inc. Now, we've covered Kim Belair before, but I still believe that there is a job to bring awareness to the kind of things that she's saying and the kind of things that she's promoting. Now, if you don't remember her, I've got a quick clip here, so you probably remember her face or remember her saying this.
In 2018, one of my best friends and I, we teamed up and we founded a company, and the original desire was just to write together. We wanted to write with the two of us and a friend of ours, and we wanted to write games, but we realized that as a unit, we were capable of, doing for others what had not been done for us, which was to support us, to empower us, to lift us up, to value our talent and to help build our skills. And so today, what we do is writing, narrative design, story building, story breaking as our first and foremost, but on a secondary level, we work very hard to get marginalized talent into the industry, to protect them the way that we would want to have been protected, to lift them up, and to get them into an industry where they're too often shut out. And basically, I think to take over in the hopes that some really dope people will be able to lead into kind of a new era for an industry that's been kind of, the same way too long. If you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
But there are loads of key notes that Kim and people like Kim have given that have gone under the radar, that are on channels that are much smaller than mine, despite mine being still very small. There are channels smaller than mine that have hosted her, and she's given her keynote speeches. The one that I'm covering today was at Womanize, and this was in 2019 for games and film. And I've pulled a couple clips here that I want to go over and I want to discuss with you guys, because I do think that this issue has been going on for a long time behind the scenes and we haven't really been paying attention to it. But I think it's high time that even if the videos don't have a lot of views, that we pull them together so they're in one place where people can view and see what these people actually behave like. Because as I said, if we do not act against these people with our money, they are going to continue to destroy our games. Now, we have the Japanese market that we can lean on, but of course people want to play their Western games. There's still much to be loved in the Western gaming market, but it won't be there for very long if people like Kim Belair and Dani Lalonde get their way.
When I was small and starting to kind of express myself creatively, I wrote about myself a lot. I think as we all do as kids, we put ourselves in our stories, we put ourselves in our illustrations, and we put ourselves and our families in like really cool scenarios, right? We have adventures and we tell stories. And I think telling stories about people who are us, who look like us, is so important at that age.
The difference between how I look at stories and how Kim looks at stories is that Kim will look at a story that is very well told, but because it's told through the lens of a white person, she won't be able to relate to it, which is the complete opposite of what it was like for me growing up. And I'll give you guys some examples. Two characters that are quite polar opposite in ideology and the way they're expressed on screen or on comic books, and that's Spider-Man and Magneto. Those are two characters that I absolutely loved growing up because I thought the message behind both the characters was very powerful. Now, both those characters are white men. And at no point when I was growing up did I look at them and think, I can't relate to this person because they're white. Or I can't see myself in their shoes because they're white. I listened to their stories, I listened to their struggles, I listened to their message, and I grew to like the characters because I felt like they represented a side of my personality that could resonate with them. I think good storytellers can take people from all walks of life and not boil it down to their gender or their skin. It boils down to their experience. Now, sometimes your experiences can be directly tied to your skin color, but when it comes to fantasy and really conveying a message, I think somebody that is good at telling stories can go beyond that. Now, Magneto and Spider-Man are both characters from two walks of life that are not even anywhere close. There's no similarities, and yet the writers were able to tell a story that, for me, I felt like I could connect with the characters and understand them and their struggles on both sides, despite them being white men. The problem is that something happened to people like this in their childhood, I believe, and they're now taking it out on everybody else. Or they are just exceptional grifters.
I was in elementary school and I felt free to do it. And I realized that, a lot of the stories that I was dealing with were about like, oh, everyone should be friends, everyone should be equal, community is important, and all these lessons that you're taught as a youth. And then I got into high school and suddenly I realized like my stories, the stories about people like me, weren't considered real or right. At the time, I was given this list of authors who I was told were legitimate, who I was told were important. These are the voices that you should be listening to at all times. And as you can imagine, they were almost entirely white men, and that was basically as much diversity as I was experiencing.
Now you see there, she pointed out the fact that they were white men, not the fact that maybe she could relate to the struggles they went through, maybe she could relate to the kind of person they were, just the fact that they were white men is what turned her off to it or made her raise eyebrows. At no point when I was growing up did I look at Goku or did I look at Luffy and think, they don't really look like me, I can't really relate to their struggles. No point did I look at Thor or Dante from Devil May Cry or any of these characters that may not share the same skin color as me or the same hair as me and think, wow, I'm not represented here. Do you know what most of my friends and myself did? Is we would see these stories and we'd sit there and we'd discuss it, and I'd have a Korean friend, I'd have a black friend, I'd have a white friend, there'd be girls sometimes that were interested in these stories back in the day, even though it was much less back then, and we would sit there and we would connect over the struggles of this character, and at no point did any of us think, yeah, but they're not black, so it's just, it makes no sense. You got to be real pea-brain minded to think like that. But obviously, this is a time back in the 90s and the early 2000s where this sort of nonsense had not infested every single section of society. It certainly existed, don't get me wrong. It was there, but it was very, very niche. But again, these sort of things fester over time and they go unchecked. Now, I would never shit on people for not understanding, because back then I didn't understand. I didn't really know that there were certain things going on behind the scenes. But now we see them in 4K, and I think if you have a platform, and I think if you have a voice, and I think if you have any common sense, you should probably speak about them. Because at the end of the day, like I say, we're the consumer. It's on us to really save the industry from turning into some bullshit that they want it to turn into.
That we discuss representation and inclusion, because we say we need a sensitivity reader. We say we need risk assessment. And we see it as sanding down rough edges instead of building out new shapes. I think that if we start looking at it in this way that's so scary, we're always going to feel daunted when we discuss representation, because we talk about mitigating risk, mitigating pain, and we never talk about creating joy. Because I think that I would love to be called into one of these consulting sessions, and instead of being said, hey, how would this hurt people like you? I would love to just hear, what would you love to see people like you do in this project? What is a cool thing that you don't feel enough from characters like you? What experience is unique to you that could bring you excitement if you finally saw it on a screen?
And this is largely why I say people like Kim Belair are damaged goods. I don't know what went on in their childhoods or what happened in their brain or if they're literally just grifting. But I don't need myself to literally be reflected in the game. I don't need myself to be reflected into a movie. I need you to tell me a story that makes me think and makes me think about things about myself that I wouldn't otherwise have been thinking about. That's what good storytellers do. You don't need to sensitivity read for these things, because what you're doing is you are actually shaving away from the original work. Now, if writers want to call in sensitivity readers off their own back, then that's up to them. If they want to destroy their own stories, by all means. But I would rather an authentic story from a storyteller. And I may not like it, but it is what it is. You don't need to come in there and police things because we need to be cuddled or we need to be made to feel better. How would this situation make you feel more represented? How about just tell a good story? They really do make it seem like black people are pathetic. They really make it seem like we can't be treated like everybody else, like we need to get handouts or that we need to be patted on the head or told that it's going to be okay. And I can tell you now, I speak for a majority of people, at least the people that I've spoken to, the people I've seen in my comment section, we don't need this shit. You're not our mums. You're not our guardians. You're not in charge of us. Our feelings are not so wet that we need you to come in there and sensitivity read things for us. Do you know, people connect through pain, and through that pain they find joy. When a hero is going through a tough time and they find a way to rise above it and they tell it without forcing some diversity quota and it's literally authentically told, we connect with those characters and maybe we discover things about ourselves that we can relate to. A prime example of this for me is that when I was getting into the gym, as all people know, when you first get into the gym, you find it hard to be consistent. You find it hard to go back every day. I used to be overweight before I got into good shape, and it was hard for me to go into that gym and be looked at by other people. And I didn't really know where to find that confidence. And one of the people that helped me in the gym indirectly, and one of the people that I related to, was Rocky. Now, Rocky is an Italian man in America. There's no relation to us in terms of how we look and how we speak and how we present ourselves. But through the storytelling in the Rocky films, I was able to find the confidence to go to the gym and push through. Thinking about the times where he would run and run and run, and even when his body felt broken, he kept on going. Even though he had trials and tribulations, he kept on going. Whilst I wasn't going through a boxer's camp, I was going through my own thing where I was trying to become healthy, I was trying to become fit, but I didn't have the confidence to go there and do it myself. And through good storytelling, the film affected me in a way that I got the confidence to go and do these things. You can create a character from anywhere, but if you make their story relatable, if you make their struggles relatable, or if you make them somebody that people can aspire to, they will respect your story. That could even be if you make the character a black woman that is gay. People are not going to care if it's not forced. If you tell a good story, people won't care. What happens here is that because you seem to think that I need to be seen on screen, you self-insert and you force yourself into the story and you force your real world politics into the story, thinking that people like me actually enjoy that shit, when it turns us off. And it's reflected in the sales of these games, it's reflected in the viewership of these films. People clearly don't like it. You can see this with Marvel itself. Before Tony clicked his fingers and killed Thanos, Marvel was riding a high that I never thought they would come down from. And guess what? They leaned all the way into this woke nonsense. And now look what's happened. I don't even watch Marvel films anymore. I can't tell you the last one I watched. The last time I watched a series on Disney Plus for Marvel was the Loki series. And that was the first one. I didn't even make it to the end. I tapped out. I couldn't be bothered. I know there's been a season 2. I know they've released a bunch of other things. I know there's more films coming out. The only one I'm probably going to watch is Deadpool. But even then, at this point, I'm not expecting much because Disney has got their grubby paws on it. We all know what they've done to Marvel films as of late. The Eternals was hogwash. Captain Marvel was rubbish. Madam Web didn't even bother. It's just nonsense. I mean, I sat through it for as much as I could. When I say didn't even bother, I'm talking about them. They didn't try. It's all rubbish. This forced diversity, forcing inclusion, people don't like it. And I'm glad that people are voting with their wallets when it comes to films, but I think gamers need to do the same thing. I think it's taken a bit longer for gamers to do it because I understand there are still parts of these games that are a lot of fun, but I do think you need to double down when it comes to these sort of people, and they need to go.
As I was so immersed in this universal generic player and this universal generic character that for a long time I would get customizable characters in games and I would be like, okay, what should I make? And I would end up just going like, okay, video game protagonists look like white dudes. They kind of have some stubble. They're just brown hair usually. And I would actually just make video game protagonists even when I was given the opportunity to make anything I wanted.
That is a you problem. I have never heard anybody say that in my life. I used to play the wrestling games quite consistently. SmackDown vs. Raw, Here Comes the Pain, as far back as the Nintendo ones, WCW games, No Mercy, all that stuff. And in the PS2 games, they had a very robust customization system that they still have today. I just don't really play the wrestling games as much because I think they peaked back on the PS2, but that's a story for another day. Shout out to Here Comes the Pain. But at no point did I go into the customization options and think, I've only ever seen white men as a protagonist, so I guess that's what I'm going to make. Never. I always made characters that looked like me, but I always just made them look like me because I was the one that was playing the game. But at no point did having the face of the cover be Brock Lesnar turn me off to playing the game or make me think I need to make a character that looks like Brock Lesnar. See, when they give you options to make the character, of course you can make a character look like you. I did it on Street Fighter 6, I'll probably do it on Dragon's Dogma when I start playing it, and I've done it on a plethora of other games. But if they have a white male lead, I'm not so fragile and I'm not so broken that I'm going to go, I don't want to play that. Or make it out as if I've been psychologically damaged to the point where when they do give me the options, I would make a character that looks just like them. It makes no sense. I mean, you could even make a character that looks just like them just because you're trying to mirror a character you've seen in another game. It doesn't necessarily come down to anything that's internalized. These people just poke at things that are not really there. But again, as I said, I've been playing games that have character customizations for a long time, and I have never, ever heard anybody say that in my life.
So in 2010, when I was finally getting out of that and starting to realize, I'm an adult and I can make whatever I want, I made a black female character for myself in Mass Effect 2, and it felt really, really good. I was like, I can just do this.
It took you how long to figure that out? Herein lies the problem. She clearly has a problem with herself, and she's had a problem with how she's viewed media growing up, and now we all have to suffer for it because she has gotten her grubby paws on games that we like. And that is just the unfortunate reality of the situation. Sometimes people get into power and they bring their own issues into the game and they ruin it for everyone else. She may think she's doing a good thing. I doubt it. I do think they're grifting. But she may think she's doing a good thing. But lady, I gotta tell you, nobody wants this. Nobody's asked for it. And nobody wants you working at that company. Nobody wants that company even in existence. Sweet Baby Inc. is a plague on Western games. And it's not just them. They're not the only consultancy firm. They're just the one that people are speaking about right now. And it's not just consultancy firms either. The Western gaming landscape is right now riddled by people that think that they're doing what's best for us, for what's in our best interest. I don't know if they're not listening to the conversations. I mean, at this point, they must be because it is all over YouTube, it's all over Twitter, it's all over social media, and they've been interacting with the posts. But for the longest time, I think that their wallets were being lined and they just thought, yeah, this is what the people wanted because the people weren't aware of what was going on behind the scenes. Now, if you're one of those people that's like, I don't care, I just want to play the game, then hey, this video is not for you. This video is not for you. I would say, if that's how you want to use your money, I'm not going to tell you any differently. This video is for people that do care about these things, do want to change things, do want to be a person that plays a piece in this puzzle. And so I encourage those people to vote with their wallets. But again, if you're someone that has just clicked on this video randomly and you're not really interested in all this DEI stuff and you just want to play games, then by all means, I'm not saying don't comment either. Leave your comments in the comment section. I always find it interesting when people don't care about these things. Sometimes they offer interesting explanations, but if you just don't care, then you don't care, buy the game. No one's forcing you not to.
But you meet Jacob first. And if you don't know, Jacob is a black man, he's a Marine, and your first interaction with him is like crouching behind cover in like this really close quarters situation for a quick conversation about your next mission. So when it happened the first time for me, I was like, oh my God, this is powerful and remarkable, because I was looking on screen at these two black characters meeting and talking one-on-one, and neither of them was cast as a criminal, they weren't a savage, they weren't a stereotype, they weren't a sidekick. And they were the only two people on screen in that moment. And it was just like really, really nice.
That's such a weird thing to say. I remember when The Walking Dead came out, and obviously the main character in The Walking Dead game is Lee, or he was in season 1 anyway. And I remember playing the game and thinking, wow, this is a really cool story they're telling. Not because he's black. Him being black never really occurred to me. Obviously I could see him on screen, but they made no mention of where he was from, and they made no mention of where Clementine was really from. I mean, I could see Clementine was mixed. She kind of resembled me in some sense, the type of hair and the way she looked skin color wise, but I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh wow, wow, there's someone there that kind of looks like me, and there's a guy there that kind of looks like my dad, I guess. Like, that just didn't cross my mind. What crossed my mind is like, wow, I never thought I would play a game like this, because I don't typically play games like this, but this story is really, really well told. I can't wait to see what they do next. And you know what? They told such a fantastic story that I ended up buying all of the Walking Dead games because they were that good. And guess what? Clementine became the protagonist. It didn't turn me off that I was playing with a girl, because they told a story where I was invested in Lee and I was invested in Clementine, and I was really excited to see where their story was going to go and how their characters were going to change during the apocalypse. And they told an expert story. It was really, really well done. To this day, that is one of the best narrative pieces in a video game I've ever seen. They conveyed love, anger, sadness, everything that you can think of was in that story. The way they interacted with other characters was expertly told. But people like this will never be able to create a story like that, because what they would have done is they would have put Lee as the protagonist because he's black, and they would have put Clementine as the co-protagonist, I guess you could say. But they would have put them there because of their skin color, and their skin color and their struggles as a person of color would have been referenced throughout the entire game. Forget the fact that we're in a zombie apocalypse. Forget the fact that we've got to figure out how to build new relationships with strangers and survive. That would all be out the window. It would solely be about where they came from, their skin color. It would be about Clementine discovering her sexuality as she grew up. And it would be about Lee constantly dealing with racism. That would all it would be about. And the game would not have sold very well, because people would have been like, you know, I'm tired of this nonsense. I guarantee you, if they were involved with Walking Dead, that's what would have happened.
And it was so nice, in fact, that I actually took my phone out and I was like, okay, I'm going to text a picture of this to my best friend and say, hey, isn't this cool? Like, the scene in the game is like one of the rare opportunities. And I got halfway through that text before I realized, oh, she's not going to see that, because her shepherd wasn't a black woman, it was a white woman. And I was about to say, okay, I guess I won't send it, when I thought, no, because this is cool for me. And her response was that, like, oh, I haven't seen that enough either. That is really, really great for you and really, really cool to see.
If I text that to my friends, white, black, Indian, Asian, it don't matter, they would have said, Mike, shut the fuck up, what are you talking about? Like, that is such a weird thing. First of all, I don't even believe that happened. That sounds fabricated. People don't behave like that. Secondly, that's such a weird thing to think, oh, I'm going to take a picture of this just because there are two people in there that mirror my skin color, and send it to my friend and say, this is the cool moment in gaming that I was waiting to see. That never happened. You never did that. You are grifting for points right now, and you're getting none. You are in the negative. I would advise you to just tell the truth next time. What happened is, you probably saw two black characters on screen. You probably felt like, oh, this is kind of cool. And that was it. You didn't text your friend, and your friend didn't text that back. And if your friend did text that back, that ain't no friend of yours. Because if my friend texts me some shit like that, I would have clowned them. I would have been like, bro, shut the hell up and play the game. What the hell are you talking about? Listen to the narrative in the game rather than focusing on what they look like. It's absolutely ridiculous. The motions that somebody has to go through to even do something like that. Like, fair enough, if it did happen, whatever. Is this somebody that should be pushing narrative in games? Absolutely not, because they're there for all the wrong reasons.
And so I talked to some other friends about it of various races, and they weren't all targeted by this moment. They weren't all black. And still, I realized that they were excited for me. They were excited just hearing me tell my story. And
no, they weren't. They were lying. The only way that they would have expressed any excitement is if you were their boss, and if they didn't, you would have flamed them for it and maybe cost them their jobs. Now, why aren't you excited for me? Are you a racist? That's what would have happened. This situation otherwise did not happen. That's just not something that would happen on planet Earth. You were dreaming. You were on La La Land. You were in the Upside Down or Narnia. Something was going on. That did not happen.
We treat our white male audience as babies. We feed them the same thing that they love over and over and over again. And when you do that to a baby, then what happens when you give them something different, right? They react like picky babies. And they've managed to be so socialized in that way to our catering to them that what do we end up with, right? The second that we deviate, we worry that we've created this nation of picky babies who refuse to play our games if we give them anything but what they want.
Do you hear that? Do you hear how she referred to you guys as babies? That we're feeding you, but we're going to change up the recipes now. And because you're like babies, you're going to throw a tantrum, even though we know what's best for you. Do you have any idea, Kim, how condescending that is. I'm not even a white man and I found that condescending. I don't know what's wrong with these people. I don't know why they think they have all the answers. If something's not broke, don't try to fix it. Now, that's not to say that you can't create new and expansive stories that people have never heard before, but you certainly don't turn around to me and talk to me like I'm a child. Now, I know you're not talking to me because obviously I'm not a white man, but I'm telling you, and I'm fairly certain that a white man listening to that is not going to enjoy what you're trying to force down his throats. If we're happy with something, come in and respect the medium and provide us with more things that we're going to be happy with. I'm probably in alignment with a lot of the white people watching this, and that I liked how things were before people like you came in and started destroying things and making out like black people or women or trans people or gay people need to be coddled. I mean, that's why some people think like this, because they are literally listening to goofballs like you and they're thinking, yeah, actually, I am oppressed. Guys, you don't need this. We don't need people like this. They're only here to destroy. They're only here to self-insert. They are self-serving. They don't care about the consumer. You could tell them, hey, I liked my story like this. Can you continue it? No, we're going to change it because we know what you like. You just haven't had a taste of it yet.
And ultimately, we cannot create under a system that bars innovation for fear of a picky baby tantrum.
Damn, a picky baby tantrum. That's insane. That, to me, just sounds like people don't like your games, and we've told you that we don't like your games, or we don't like you being associated with these games, and you had a tantrum. See, at this moment in time, people like Kim and the person that's working on the Black Panther games, Danny, they are in positions of power right now, and they are going to push their weight around. And maybe they'll get away with a couple more games selling very well, but this is going to come crumbling down. So my advice to you, Kim, and people like you, is you better start listening to the consumer, because ultimately you have your job because of us. It's the same way that any other business operates. If the WWE, for example, does not listen to the consumers to the point that we are literally telling them we don't want this, and you are giving it to us, and people stop buying tickets and they stop tuning in, and nobody tunes into Raw on Netflix when it decides to go there, guess what? Netflix, the USA Network, and all these other places that are invested are going to go, what are you doing? The people are saying they don't like it. You're telling them they do like it. Clearly they don't. Fix it. And what does that mean? Money talks. Our attention talks. Now, you're going to get all of our attention, but you're going to get it in this format, and you're going to get it for as long as it takes. I'm not the only creator that's doing this. There's much larger creators than me that are doing this, and they're raising awareness, and they're letting people know that people like you are talking to them like babies and telling them what they like, even though we're telling you we don't like it. And eventually, you are going to have to listen to us. Eventually, enough people are going to catch on to this, and eventually, you're going to either go out of business or you're going to create stories that we actually want to be invested in. There's only so many times that Marvel or DC or any other gaming company or comic book company or whatever it might be is going to give you their IPs. You're going to create a game and we're going to tell you we don't like it, just like we did with the Suicide Squad. It's going to bomb, and then you'll do another one and it will bomb, and eventually those companies will be like, right, you're out the door if you don't change your ways, and you will be forced to change your ways. So continue talking shit at these stupid keynote speeches, continue gaslighting people and pretending like they are children and you know what's best for them, and see how that works out for you.
And so overall, I think we need to stop thinking that our core demographic and our core marketing demographic has to define the demographics of our creative content, and instead start assuming that players want new stories. They want to see something new, experience something new, and if we bring joy to a more broad audience, that's going to enlighten and bring joy to our core audience as well.
You're right in saying that people want to experience new things, but not all new things are going to be good. I mean, we certainly experienced a new version of Marvel in this year and mostly of last year that we did not like, and the audience responded, and the superhero market is down. It's not as up as it was when they had the original cast of Avengers there, and that was new, and people didn't like it. There's loads of stories that you can tell, and there's loads of diverse ways to represent people, but forcing narratives and self-inserting and making up these scenarios where black people need to be coddled or women need to be coddled is not going to serve you. You try to tell a new story and you try to show a new perspective with Ghostbusters a couple of years ago with an all-female cast, and look how that worked out for you. Now, if women wanted that representation, that film wouldn't have bombed. But guess what? Women weren't going to watch that either. The same way that you will change these games like Suicide Squad and women are not going to buy them either. As a matter of fact, the people that you are trying to suck up to don't even want to buy these games, because if they were the majority of people that were going to purchase this game, it would have done somewhat better. But again, you are preaching to a minority. You are preaching to a crowd that is almost not there. The overwhelming majority of people like the way games used to be. We liked it when they were stories that were self-contained and they had rich characters with rich backgrounds. It's not to say that politics can't be in games. Politics are represented in games, but they are represented within their own universes. Sometimes they draw influence from real world politics, but if you tell them in a way that feels forced, like you're trying to push a message onto people that is rooted in some ideology that majority of people are not on board with or don't want to see in their games, or it just doesn't fit in that particular moment, but you forced it in there, gamers are going to catch on. They're not as stupid as you might think. They have caught on with Mortal Kombat. They caught on with the Suicide Squad. They caught on in Spider-Man. Now, in Spider-Man's case, the IP is so big that it's going to take a very long time for people to go, I'm not really invested in that anymore. There was a time where Spider-Man games weren't doing so well, and that is not even because of any forced ideologies. The gameplay just wasn't very good. But there could come a time where you force shit down people's throats so much that even Spider-Man fails, even God of War fails. You can't run this nonsense forever. Gamers are very aware of what you're trying to do, and to the ones that are not aware, that's what this video is for. That keynote speech can be found on a YouTube channel called Booster Space. It's from 4 years ago, but I haven't seen much coverage on it, so I thought it'd be good to raise that awareness, because like I said, these issues have been festering for a very, very long time, and now we're really starting to see them in all of our games. And if we don't speak about them and we don't vote with our wallets soon, this will be everywhere. They may even take over the Japanese scene, who knows? I would never say never to anything. Whilst Japanese games are mostly protected right now and they do hold up the integrity of storytelling, that could change overnight. And so if you're ever confused at why we are talking about these things, that is why. I'm a firm believer that if you don't shine light on certain things, they will fester. Anyways guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, have a good day, and peace.